Mhm. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this live stream with District 3 City Council candidate, James Bowers. How you doing, James?
On top of the world.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Well, as we about to have this fire conversation, as I call it, for people to get to know you a little bit better, to understand why you're running, and to hear about some of the solutions that you plan to provide to the city of Charlotte. So we'll probably have a conversation. I'll open the floor up to questions from our viewers, but the most important thing that our viewers and people that you will be potentially representing want to know is, who is James H. Bowers and what can he do not only for District 3, but for the city of Charlotte?
Well, thank you, Sean, for allowing me to speak on your podcast. I appreciate the work that you do, that you've made an effort and a strong sense of urgency to get the knowledge of what the candidates are speaking about, and even me. A little bit about me. I've been in Charlotte for 35 years, worked in the mortgage business for most of my career, and the automobile business. I'm an author of one book. It's called Explain to God. I worked for the Motor Vehicle Review Board for 5 years with Charlotte, and I decided to to get into politics. I prayed about it, and I felt as though that I was led to do this. And in doing this, I found out so many things that are going on in the city, perhaps nationally also, but more importantly, the city, as to how decisions are made and how those decisions are rather effective or non-effective. But I've seen mostly a pattern where the city officials are making decisions perhaps not in the best interest for those in my district, which I'm going to be represented, and perhaps not for the city. I don't harp on necessarily what the problem is. I'm more so of a problem solver. I look at a situation and gauge what are the potential avenues that I can use effectively so that I can get to a modicum of a solution that helps everyone. As I said to everyone, my job is not to legislate privately what someone does, but what those things we are given and the latitude we're giving in the law that's rather beneficial for everyone.
Okay. So I know you mentioned your background, you're author, you have entrepreneurial background. What in your background do you think will help you to be successful as a city councilman?
Well, that's a good question. So most of my career has been about problem solving. And problem solving, oftentimes you have some fixed variables, but most of the time, non-fixed variables. Whether in the automobile business, you're meeting and greeting a customer who says, I'm just looking. And then you forge a relationship with them and then help them to meet that need. Whether in the mortgage business, a person is saying, this is my first time buying a home and I don't know what to do. And so I try to channel my experience with their needs, helping them to understand what they can qualify for and what it means to qualify, not just financially, just about the mortgage, but how it comes against them as an aggregate to whatever else that they're trying to accomplish. And in politics, very much the same way. You are now a servant of the people. So what you're doing is representing them in a way that best suits them. It doesn't mean that there's a perfect solution for 100% of the people, but in our representative republic, we are governed by what the majority of the people say, and that's what we do. We do what the people ask us to do, and then we implement it. Of course, when you are sitting across a diocese with other representatives of other districts. You want to hear what they have to say and to apply that to what you're trying to do for your district and your area, and then make sure that you get the highest return out of that. Oftentimes, that does take uh, negotiating skills. It does take understanding and empathy of the effects that these decisions will have on your neighbor, and that neighbor could be in the same district or districts that are connected to you. So these type of skills of understanding the needs of the individual, not only as a neighbor but collectively as a city, has been honed since actually I was a little boy. And I'll tell you a story real quick. When I was 5 years old, and this was my first job. I had to watch my grandmother because she was not able to live alone. And part of my job was to make my mother and aunts and uncles aware if there was some need that she had. Now, at 5 years old, you want to be at home with your siblings, you want to play. But no, I was given responsibility. Well, in the beginning, it was not easy. But I found out that once I committed to taking care of the responsibility and anticipating her needs, I found out that that was an ability that I didn't know that I had, that I know that I could harness and use today. And even today, I found out that that first job I had was also the best job I had because it helped make the foundation and build the foundation of who I am now.
Gotcha. I hear you. I hear you. So, speaking of responsibility and speaking of dealing with situations and people that may not always agree with you, how would you approach working with those who are across the aisle, who have views that are diametrically opposed to yours, that do not see the world the same way you do? How would you interact with them? How would you work with them? How would you come to some kind of compromise, some kind of working relationship in order to get things done here in Charlotte?
Thank you for that question. Well, I draw on my experience as an usher for over 25 years, dealing with thousands of people every Sunday. In every situation, it's unique, and everybody has needs and everybody has wants. And even where politics are concerned, that politician wants to succeed. That politician has needs. Their constituent has needs. So there's an understanding going in that there are going to have to be areas that are a give and take, give a little bit here and give a little bit there, so that everyone wins. Now, do we know that there are sometimes people who want to win all the time? Yes, there are. But do you understand, as anyone should understand, when they're in the arena, that sometimes small losses make good gains? That means you can give a little bit. That means you take a little bit. And in that negotiation, you understand common ground. That common ground must be superior to your individual appetites or your individual needs. I think it's most important that whenever you are in that arena, when you are making decisions that's opposed to your colleague or your counterpart, that you stand your ground. Because when you stand your ground, that sends a resounding voice to the people around you that there's a solid place to be. And I find that in many areas of politics, people don't stand their ground. They acquiesce, they subrogate their responsibilities so that others can make them more acceptable or amenable to their needs. So in representing District 3, it's not about District 4 or 1 through 7. It's about District 3 and me serving that district with the highest standard that I can. And one of the standards is standing your ground.
Gotcha. Stand your ground. So what are some of the needs that you've seen for District 3? You've been around, you've been out in the district, you've talked to some of the residents in District 3. What are some of the pressing needs in your eyes that District 3 needs that have not been addressed, that you can address as a member of City Council?
Well, that's a many and multifaceted question.
What are the top two? Tell me, what are the top two needs that you've seen?
So the single mom wants to know that there's a job there for her. The single mom wants to know that her children are safe. The elderly residents of Charlotte who are the foundation of building Charlotte, they want to know that they can sit outside on their porch. So there comes into safety and security, which is most important. We have a very, very good police department, yet it's undermanned. We have only 1,500 police officers for over 900,000 people. That to me is a little bit off. We have, and from my best estimate, over 300 of those retiring this year, and only a few in the academy. So those issues about safety, those issues about jobs are some of the most important. And depending on the day, it can be, of course, put behind with other issues with relations in the community. How many permits are we going to allow approved in our area where it's taken away from single family homes and multifamily homes are getting somewhat of a free ride. Now, there's nothing wrong with investments. That's not the issue. But more importantly, the single family community is part of the bedrock of what makes every city great. The community that comes where multifamilies are concerned are transient. They're not there. They're not building families as it would be for someone who perhaps wants to live in a single family home in a neighborhood that they know their neighbor, and they're invested in the neighborhood by getting involved with community activities and so on and so forth.
Okay, it brings me to, I'm gonna ask a set of questions related to that, because that's something that's very important, especially in and around your district and other areas within Charlotte, is how I know the city has, I think it's a 2040 plan where they were talking about, instead of having zoning for single family, having a lot of multifamily type of zonings and things like that. How would you address that as a member of city council? I mean, that plan is already essentially being implemented. What are some things that, in your opinion, that you could do to either help to increase single family zonings or make sure that zonings and the builders of those multifamily units do not take away from the community, but actually enhance it and benefit it?
Well, that's a far-reaching question, simply because it's already been in place for a couple of years. It did not incorporate how it had to adjust for COVID, but its plan was put in place. So basically, when I look at the 2040 plan, their plans make room for amendments. They make room for adjustments. But I'm not sure if it makes room for the single family homeowner. And that's a little troubling to me. I'd make some adjustments to that. I'd modify that. I would take away some of in my estimation, I don't think that you need over 80% of Charlotte zoned for multifamily buildings. That to me is, a pathway to limiting the single family market. Now, I'm sure a builder would tell you that, unless they're multifamily home builders,
Right.
that, building a single family home, is part of what builds the neighborhood up. Is part of what draws people to Charlotte. But
why is that? Why is that, James? In your opinion, why is the single family home more of a driver of community uplift than, say, multifamily townhomes or condos?
Well, that's a good question, but it's an easy answer. Well, the community is invested. You see, when someone is renting, they're not invested in the property. They're not there. They're not beautifying that area, what they own. They have an investment in it, and they expect a return down the road. But inside of the multifamily community, it's not that. It's expected that the investor, the owner of that multifamily facility, he's going to do the taking care of it. He's going to do this. And even in apartments, as you can go about the city, there are break-ins, there are murders, and so on and so forth. And what can that community do? The multifamily unit owner is not policing the way that it is better done inside the community. And the communities that are growing up together, their families are growing up, they're connected with the schools, they're connected with the neighbor, they're connected with city council, and all of those things that make a, a city or a neighborhood a part of their civic responsibility is what helps them to be connected again. That connection between a single family homeowner who has built an investment, who is constantly upgrading that investment, and of course, watching over his neighbor at the same time, because when you watch over your neighbor, they watch over you. So not so much at the multifamily level, but the single family level, again, it's part of what's, well, it may be, part of what builds the nuclear family. And that's important. It's important to any society that the family unit is sustained, not the individual unit, because that doesn't build the infrastructures that are necessary to make our cities sound, not only from a revenue base, but sound from a civic base where, the morals and standards of that city are rooted and grounded really in the hearts and minds of those single family homeowners, a little bit more so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because that's part of why certain communities are successful and certain communities are not. And particularly in the Black community, unfortunately, we have so many single parent households. I mean, almost 75% of Black households are headed by, single parents, mostly single women. And I think that's contributed to a lot of the issues that we've seen in the urban community with crime and some other things and lack of opportunity, because without having that strong institution of the family, the nuclear family, the male and the female and the father and the mother and the children being raised up, being taught principles, being taught morals, having a responsibility, because the child, has a responsibility to their parents. They feel obligated to their parents, and they also have the fear of their father in the home as well. So some of that has been missing. I think that has led to a lot of the issues that we have seen. And unfortunately, I'm going to ask you this question. I think the government has contributed to a lot of those ills, especially in the Black community, by providing assistance and not giving people incentive to work themselves out of situations. So how would you deal with, because I know city council has some control over certain funding, over certain things, but how would you make sure that any funding that you're responsible for that goes to District 3 truly reaches the district and doesn't just line the pockets of, builders and investors and people like that?
Right. Well, let me go back to where you talked about the single family home. Being a single parent doesn't mean that the child is not nurtured properly. They don't know what the issues are, and they're not important. It's more important in my mind, whether a single family person or a mother and father, caretaker, etc., are nurturing that child, has a complete understanding, and the issues are simple and clear to understand. Not only the issues, but resources are for them. And then you need transparency, clear transparency, so that the single parent or the parent, the mother and father, etc., can understand where these benefits are, where these programs are that can assist them. Because government is supposed to be for the people, not the people for the government. So we, as a government official or a city official, it's my responsibility to make them aware of programs or information that's available to help them better understand, even down to the PTA, help them to better understand what's affecting their child, and their child is coming home a better child and not going away, leaving the house good and coming back worse. Now, about the funding getting down to our community, absolutely. So one of the things that I want to promote is again, I said transparency, and that transparency will come perhaps in the form of an additional website where the citizen can go and ask these questions on an individual basis. The technology is here to enable the individual citizen to see exactly what their representatives are doing on an ongoing basis. And so that technology can also be used so that the District 3, and I'm going to use District 3 as an example, so that District 3 can inform me almost immediately what they think about the issue. I don't think that you necessarily need to go in a quorum with 9, 11, 7 people, however many people are in the quorum, to know what someone thinks about a particular decision in your area. I want to make it available as possible so that the citizenry in each home can give me their opinion, so I can truly be representing their opinion. Now, this is done again because I know it can be done because the technology is there. We have so many issues where we've said, or so many times rather, we've said that the telephone company can do this and do that and have surveillance. Well, why don't we just do it so that citizens can really actually tell me what they're voting? The technology is there. And so one of my major things is to hear the voice of the people, listen to what they say, and then act upon it. That's
Good.
why a servant is supposed to serve and not make their own decisions independent of what the people are saying.
Good. Yeah. And you're right. And I like that. As a representative, we have a representative government, and our representatives should represent our values and represent what we believe. And that's a good point, because I think a lot of times people tend to demonize single parent households. I grew up in a single parent household. I came from just me and my mom. So I know that although you may not necessarily have all of the things that a two-parent household have, as long as you have the love, the nurturing, the person that's there to push you along and make sure that you achieve everything that is inside of you, and that you achieve everything that God wants you to be. I think that's important as well. So it's good to make sure that we encourage those single parent households and not demonize them also.
And one of the things that, let me add to you right there. And one of the things that leadership, it's its responsibility. Leadership has a tendency, based on their decisions, based on what they are saying to the people, to instill confidence and hope and belief that there's going to be a good solution for tomorrow and the decisions you make. And again, the leader has the responsibility to set the tone, whether a single family home or whatever. And if there is not a leader there, then that's where the sadness comes in, the knowing or the thinking that I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not sure about what I'm going to do or what my decision is. That's part of our responsibility in a leadership position, to give them that hope, to give them that sense of direction, and let them know that we're in a position and we're taking the position of making a decision and giving you the best information. And if we have to change it, understand this, that we're changing it only for your better.
Gotcha. So let me ask you about this question. What do you think about, is it the government's responsibility to take care of people, or should the government provide funding to charities, nonprofits, and then let them go about providing the necessary benefits and the necessary help to the community?
Yeah, another broad question there, on a broad stroke. Government's initial role was to be representative of the people, and that representation has a responsibility. It does not give you an unlimited wedge or weight on them. If government is supposed to do anything, rather, it's supposed to do and make decisions for all the people, not some of the people. And if it's their responsibility to, levy taxes and have revenue, that money is supposed to be for the people. It's not supposed to be for the people who are wanting to get here. It's supposed to be for the citizenry and those things that reflect on America, or even Charlotte, and of course down to District 3. Our job is not to be elected to take care of people who are doing things illegally, or people who are doing things to try to get in America. We have now, on a national basis, where there are 3 million people who've come to America, and they're opening the doors for them. Those 3 million, that the monies that have been available for those 3 million people could have helped someone right here in Charlotte or North Carolina or any state. So oftentimes there are decisions that have been made that are just seemingly irresponsible, that are not in the best interest of the nation, the state, the city, or the county. And that's why I'm running for office, so that people understand this is the way that I think. I think about taking care of my children and my neighbor and my city, et cetera, first, and not going somewhere else and asking people who I don't know, who are not responsible. I think it like this way. If 1 million people came from another country, they could have then changed that country they're in. There appears to be a lot of questions there. You're leaving your land. It's not important for you to fight for it. Well, I tell you this, I'm a patriot. And I'll fight for these things. And I'll fight for the people in District 3 and even the nation if God calls me, because it's not about me. It's about serving them.
How would you go about dealing with the issue of gentrification that's happening in the Charlotte area, especially in certain predominantly Black areas? I mean, we've had older homes and things be torn down and replaced with high-rise condos and other things. How would you go about handling that and making sure that the residents of those communities ensure that they receive, number one, the support if they want to stay in their homes, and number two, to make sure that anybody coming in, they're not totally remaking and redoing communities that have historic value to the city of Charlotte?
Right. Yeah. That's a past, present, and future question. So I'll just try to, speak to the future part.
Okay.
So in this regard, as far as gentrification is coming, it seemingly is one-sided. And that one-sidedness needs to be looked at quite clearly, quite directly, and quite intensively. And where there has been an obvious obfuscation of the responsibility of city council or any other government official in helping the community, I think that we should build a quorum, build a platform where there is funding there to help the people who have been the foundation and the bedrock of Charlotte, because they've been here a long time. They've paid taxes, they've been citizens, they've seen their children grow and graduate from schools, and they've graduated from schools. And what has been the benefit for them? You move them out. No, that's not the way I do things. There should be a perhaps, and perhaps we'll help create that since we brought it up. There should be a funding there for this type of issue so that we can set aside our differences, because these people have been what has made Charlotte what it is today. It's supposed to be the Queen City, a city set on a hill. Where is the light? And the light needs to be shined on that, just like it needs to be shined on over 80% of Charlotte being zoned for multifamily homes.
Gotcha. So let's talk about security. There was just an incident today at a high school where I believe either a shooting or somebody took a gun to school. How would you address the relationship between certain communities and the police? I know we've had a lot of retirements, some defections from CMPD. How would you go about ensuring that community relationship with CMPD is strong so that we can help to stem the tide, if you will, of crime in the community?
Well, to answer that one, I'm just going to talk about root causes. Okay. One of the root causes of people doing bad things is fear, and that fear runs through the community when they don't feel safe. And that runs into the citizens when they don't feel safe, and so on and so forth. And so that's translated, that spirit can be translated to the children. And children sometimes do bad things. We know that every child has been a rebel at one point or another. And so when these things happen, the root cause, again, going back is I think that the engagement of the police officers in the community, there has to be more. There has to be more of them there that are properly trained, that are engaged with the community, that are visible, And that visibility is not as apparent as it used to be in the old days. You know, it was a police officer walking the beat. Now, of course, they ride bicycles, perhaps horses downtown, they drive cars, but there has to be more qualified and police officers who are buying into the community. Now, that takes training, that takes money. We have to take away some of this monies that we have perhaps in programs that are for special interest groups, and we have to look at that. Sometimes these programs are good programs, but they're not funded properly. So what I would do, I would suggest our own city council, I would suggest an increase in the police department throughout the city, perhaps even emerging with the county police, so that we could have more coverage. And not only that, would sit down on a monthly basis. You know, there's something called the PTA that parents do with the those elected school board and such. I would sit down and have this kind of discussion on an ongoing basis with the community, so that the community can see the police officers in it. And most of the communities here have some sort of community program or outreach that represents their community, and have police officers on a schedule, on a monthly basis coming in, and then have events where police officers, they are not as police officers, but part of the community, so that they can be part of it. And so that some of these low-level lawlessness can be avoided. Also, I would have where I've seen lately that city council has not done, they have not enacted the ordinances that the police need to support and to follow up on. This is another thing. Shirking your responsibility, kicking the can down the road. That's not a part of what I do. I do things now. I do things now. I do things now, because people's lives are on the line. Not only the youth, but also the older community. Again, I want people to be able to say, I've sat on my porch and I didn't feel like I was unsafe.
Gotcha. So Charlotte has passed in the past year or so a non-discrimination ordinance that in essence makes it not illegal, but makes it hard for certain people if they have strong biblical values or strong values in terms of how they view marriage and how they view human sexuality. How would you handle any type of issue of a business? Let's say a business person as a photographer, you know, they don't want to take a photographer of a wedding that they disagree with. In your opinion, I'm not asking you to litigate the non-discrimination ordinance because that was in the past, but if you were on the city council during that time, what would have been some of your arguments in relation to how the city should handle these type of instances if they come up?
Yeah, it's a good question. Another past, future, and present area to delve in. Well, I'll take the present one part of it. Well, presently, you know, when someone says the word discrimination, it has a real negative connotation there that people sometimes understand emotionally, not lawfully. And so within within the law, there's a description of what's right and wrong. Again, as a public official, it's imperative that we don't look at things based on a slim narrative of what that means. Inside the law, it says this is what is interpreted, just like the Constitution. We have all certain inalienable rights. We can choose in our garden whether we want to plant potatoes, and another guy can choose cucumbers. But we can't take the right from him to plant whatever he wants to plant. Just like a business, we can't take from him the right to deal rightfully with a person, not irrespective of how they choose their personal life. You know, God doesn't look at that way, because God made all of us, but he gave us choices. And those choices invariably are going to be the fruits of what our decisions are going to be the results of what our decisions are. That's what's going to create that fruit. And so stay within understanding what the laws are. If we then take on the the spirit of respecting our brothers, as they say, love thy neighbor, that'll take care of the other part of it. Because if you get into a contest of what this person says versus what that person says, then it's no longer civic. It's more so controversial and constantly fighting. Because, yesterday, today, and tomorrow's laws have to adjust, just like the communities of these days of today. We have to adjust to the new communities coming in as well. And then they have to adjust also, just like the parts that we have to do in a negotiating setting. We have to give a little and we have to take a little. And so that makes it work for everyone, because in an imperfect world, there are no perfect laws.
So let's talk about your political journey. So you're running as a Republican. Have you always been a Republican?
No. For many years, I was a Democrat, and for a number of years, I was an unaffiliated, as they say, independent. And I chose to be a Republican because it more reflected what I believe, my biblical worldview. Let me make that clear. It's my biblical worldview, and I am a Christian. That doesn't mean that I take a hammer and lay it on somebody's head because they choose otherwise. It is inherent and imperative that in this society, in our world, that you have the ability to choose. And as I said before, you can, in your choice, you can choose blue car and I can choose a red one. That doesn't mean we have to disagree, but it means that we have different choices, and those different choices will satisfy our needs in a different way. That's okay. But I always try to look at on the things of others first before I look at my choice. Because when I do that, then I'm easily looking at your situation and not concentrating on mine. I think it brings a better balance, not only a more better balance morally, but also in relation to you as a person. Because I look at every person as being unique, a creation of God, and God didn't make any copies. So there are no copies, and he doesn't make any mistakes either.
Okay. So in the last 50 or 60 years, the Republican Party has had challenges communicating your message that you just communicated in a way that can attract a more diverse voting base. How can you overcome that challenge? Understanding that you have an R next to your name, and immediately people will understand that or think that, oh, you're coming as a Republican, I'm not going to hear what you have to say. How would you overcome those type of resistance or that challenge?
First of all, I would pray. And because when you are engaged with unknowns, you need something that you can depend on far greater than the unknowns. And that's a relationship I have with Jesus Christ. I'll pray about a situation. And I'm not saying I pray because I'm fearful. I pray because I want to not separate myself from a person or to think more highly of myself so that I don't think on how important that other person's needs are. And so even when I engage with someone who perhaps may not think the way I think or make decisions the way I make decisions, I always listen. And I may say to them, I respectfully disagree, or I may just tell them what I agree upon on what they say. Because 99% of the things we agree on, it's the 1% of the things that try to divide us. And I won't let that 1% govern the 99.
So as a Republican, there are certain platforms and things that the National Party stands on that obviously the local and the city party will also have to agree upon. Would there ever be a case that you would not necessarily go against your party, but if they were pushing something that you did not agree with personally and it went against your convictions, would you vote with your party, or would you stand up for your convictions to understand that you still have that independent mindset, that although you may be running and listed as a Republican, that you have your values and your stances still come first?
Well, to say that, there is a perfect scenario, a perfect answer to everything, I would try to be like God. And in an imperfect world, an imperfect society, an imperfect party, which all are, and they're imperfect, I'm saying it because they always have to change. Perfection doesn't have to change. We have to change. And we have to change with the times. We have to change with circumstances. We have to change with what our constituents need. And so, as far as in regards to rather what our party at the top may say in regards to what's happening on the ground, my interest is who I serve. And in being a servant, you hear what other people will say, but the greatest voice is for those whom you serve. If that runs in a conflict rather, with perhaps a national agenda, then that's the way it has to be. Not because I want to cause conflict. It's only because when you are elected as a servant, everything that you do is going to be looked at and magnified upon. And even that as it relates to the national leadership, if you're waffling because of a little pressure, then how will you make decisions when pressure is put upon you on the national or global stage? All decisions are local. I try to make decisions that are best for those that I serve. Nothing can come in between that. What happens in Raleigh, it's sad or it's good, but it's what's happening in Charlotte. That's where I am. If I become governor, then I'll have to look at the state. If I become president, then I'll have to look at it from the national stage and so on and so forth. But for me and my house, I'll serve my people in Charlotte.
So speaking of your people in Charlotte, Charlotte is a part of Mecklenburg County. How would you work with the county commissioners to ensure that they're not passing things that could negatively impact your district?
Where people are representative of their district, they have certain strongholds, certain positions that they choose for certain reasons. The most important thing is to understand what their platform is, what their needs are, what they're trying to accomplish in their area. And in regards to that, you articulate that to the best of your ability as it relates to yours, and then you merge it together to make it stronger. As my wife says, a three-fourth cord is hard to break. So when we agree, we've put forward a cord that becomes even stronger than our individual decision. Now, if I have to stand alone, that's not a problem, because when that ground that I stand on is going to be supported by the people that I serve. And now, not that I'm speaking for me alone, I'm speaking for an army, and that army comes out of District 3.
So speaking of District 3, for those who are not familiar with the districts in Charlotte, where is District 3 and what areas does it encompass?
Well, to the north, it encompasses part of, it's close to Mount Holly Road, that comes all the way down to the south, that goes to Youngblood Road. And actually, look at South Boulevard to the west. Typically, that incorporates most of District 3 that always goes over to Steel Creek. And so we have somewhere near 116,000 people that we represent in the district. And I know that, the district is broken up into, mostly one party, et cetera. But you know what? I don't look at parties. It's not about the party, it's about the people. I represent it from a Republican standpoint, but I represent the entire district. And the decisions that I'll be making will be soundly reflective of that. The decisions that have been made prior, I don't think it reflects the benefits of those in the community. You talked about gentrification, you talked about single family homes, et cetera. the people here don't feel that way. And the other part about it that's most important, that people have to feel safe. That's where leadership comes in. That's where leadership has to be the light in the darkness that makes them feel secure and lets them know what is prevailing, what's coming, why it's being done, and that I'm the guy that'll get it done.
So, in the time that we have left, a few more questions. Yes, it has been a one-party stronghold in the city of Charlotte and on the city council, save for a few seats for a long time. What makes your campaign different? Why would somebody say, I'm gonna hop on board the James Bowers train because he's a different kind of candidate? What makes you different than all the other candidates that have run as Republicans or has run as Democrats in the past?
That is a very, very interesting question because it tends to lean towards pushing me up and pushing others down, and that's what I won't do. But I will say this, if you want someone to make decisions that are aligned with the will of the people, that are the benefit of the people in District 3, that is not aligned with public interest or special interest, I'm the guy. But if you want that to continue, then you'll vote for someone else, because it's not about me. It's about the people. It's about their needs. It's about what's beneficial for them. It's about the older folks being able to sit on their porches. It's about the single family homeowner knowing that their taxes won't keep on going up. Even the motor vehicle taxes won't keep going up. And it's about making the city safe again and secure again, and making the relationship between city officials and the people trustworthy again and transparent again. That's what I bring. That's what I hope to resonate in the decisions that I'll make in the future. And of course, I'm hoping that you've heard that in what I've said today.
Good. So a few more questions for you. To sum up your candidacy and to sum up your campaign, I know we've touched on it quite often here in our conversation, but if somebody were to get on an elevator with you, James, and say, so James, tell me about your campaign in one paragraph or in 30 seconds, how would you describe your campaign?
Well, I like using this slogan that I use. If you want to secure your civic powers, vote for James H. Bowers. And it's important because people sometimes don't know that they have civic responsibilities. And the responsibility of every citizen is to vote, is to speak your mind, and to have someone that reflects the mind that you think, that you believe in, that reflects your standards, traditions, and so on and so forth. I've been here for 35 years. I've seen South Boulevard, a 2-lane road going to Pineville, and now it's 485, it's 4 lanes, it's businesses on both sides of the aisle. So a lot of people have been moved out, but I want those people to know, even the ones that have moved in, that I'm here to help sustain what you're building, and will help provide a pathway to the success you hope for in the future.
So I know that you do not have a candidate that's going against you in the primary. So what are some of the things that you're going to be doing between now and the election in July? What are some things that people can assist you with? Where are some areas that people can help get involved to help propel your campaign even further?
Now, that's the best question I've had all night. So I do have a website. It's James H. Bowers for citycouncil.com. And that website, you can see some of the platforms that I support and stand behind. You can also donate to the campaign and volunteer. All those things are necessary. But even though that's there, I'm also, of course, on this podcast, which is helping me to show who I am to you and to everyone. Next week, I'll be on another podcast. On May 14th, I'll be having a town hall at Victory Christian Center campus on Old Pineville Road. from 12 to 4. That's so that my district can get to know me. It'll also be live streamed. People outside the district tune in. Maybe there'll be something that people who are moving into the district and those who just arrived at the district can glean from what I'm saying, because I want to hear what you say. I want to hear how you feel. I want to hear what the previous decisions in the area have affected you. I want to know that the Charlotte Douglas Airport and the new jobs that have come to the city, you've benefited from it. I want you to know that the new construction jobs that are coming to our district, that you've benefited from it. And I want to know that the decisions that have been made prior have really been a benefit to you, because if not, those are what I'm going after first when I get elected.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I enjoyed our conversation, James. I appreciate it. I think you'll be a breath of fresh air to the city of Charlotte, because we need change. We need people that have strong biblical values, people that have the heart of the people at the forefront and not their own selfish desires. So we wish you nothing but the best. Please, if you understand, James, say that website one more time, James, for people so they'll know how to help you.
James H. Bowers for FOR citycouncil.com.
Awesome.
James
Awesome.
H. Bowers for citycouncil.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, James. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless you.